Well, staying with this, the World Bank's findings on gender bias are backed up by the latest Grant Thornton annual Women in Business report. Leanne Back is Director of Advisory Services at Grant Thornton. She joins me now in studio. Leanne, welcome to Business Review. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's start, Leanne, by looking at the study, because it's clear to see that women in Africa are more likely to be blocked from reaching business leadership positions by gender bias, because of gender bias, anywhere else in the world. And this is astounding to me, especially seeing as we hear so much about getting women into top leadership positions, whether government, business. So why are we not seeing a change? And if we're not seeing a change, why is it taking so long to get an improvement?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, the stats show that 44% of females in Africa believe that gender bias is the reason that's holding them back from reaching leadership positions, compared to a global average of 19%. So this is quite a big differential between Africa and the rest of the world. If you look at the Eastern European countries, Northern European countries, gender bias is not such a big issue. It seems to be the biggest issue is Africa, less of an issue, but still an issue in Asia and in South America. And it seems to be that we have cultural values and expectations that we think that women can only perform certain jobs. And women should actually be at home looking after the family and not in the workplace. So gender bias is a big issue, holding women back in industry in general. So we tend to find that this flows through into like an interview process where there's sexist type of questions that are asked.
Okay.
And a sexist type of environment. And
can you give an example?
I can give an example. I can just in a working environment, what you can see sometimes is that a woman might enter a meeting with a whole group of males, same qualifications, same status or level within the organization, but she would be expected to pour the tea for the meeting, or expected to take the minutes, because those are the biases, assuming that that's a woman's role.
And is this what you took into consideration when you did your survey? I mean, did you focus on male gender bias, or did you question males? Who did you focus on when doing the survey?
Okay. We questioned females and males. So only half of the male. So 44% of females in Africa said gender bias. 19% of males said that gender bias was holding women back. So males don't see it as much as females do. And that sort of ratio is it's similar to the global average. So where you've got 19% of females and 10% of males are saying that gender bias is an issue.
Okay, I want to come back to what you mentioned earlier about going into a meeting and then being expected to pour the tea. And you mentioned in your report that the gender bias is subtle at the beginning of a career, and then suddenly you hit that glass ceiling.
Yes.
Why? Why do we see that glass ceiling still after decades of discussing this particular issue?
I wish I could say. You know, there are certain organizations that have made a concerted effort to break down that glass ceiling. And you'll see in those types of organizations, there's quite an emphasis on collaboration. There's an emphasis on measuring people on performance on their output, as opposed to how many hours they put into a workday, or how many years they've been in that particular position, whether they get a promotion or not. And they measure people on output. And that's where women tend to perform better than males, because they're not necessarily at the office for that long, but they can be there to produce the output.
So then, is this a mindset in society that needs to change?
Yes, it is. So we actually say that there's four things we need to look at. It's society that needs to change. There's business that needs to put in some measures. Government needs to put in some measures. And women ourselves, we need to put in some measures. We actually need to stand up to the plate and actually say, listen, this is not acceptable. We need to put ourselves out there more.
But do women in society have that platform to be able to stand up and say, I'm hitting that glass ceiling, or this is what I'm experiencing in my working environment? Do they have that allowance to say that?
In some cases, yes. In some cases, not. And I do believe that culture does play a role here, and it's something that we need to look at. And that's why the whole society aspect of having to look at how can we influence society and change perceptions of what a woman's role is.
And I know at the beginning you mentioned how we compare to the rest of the world. Take us a bit more through that.
So if you actually have a look at Eastern European countries, in Russia, I think it's close to 40% of leadership positions in the mid-sized businesses are held by women. Now, they're the best performing country in the world. And if you look at the historical aspects as to why, in the communist society, they had an equal education opportunities for males and females. And this is really important. So an equal amount of women went into science qualifications as males, and there was no sort of gender bias at a young level. So this is now, many, many years later, is now manifesting when you're starting to see women in leadership positions. So that type of societal view on how we educate our females, how we treat our females, if we treat them equally, the difference that it makes. And if you look at, for example, the Northern European countries, the paternity leave options that are available. So they're saying this is parenting is a dual responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not just the female's responsibility.
Yeah.
So by providing paternity leave and paid paternity leave, makes quite a big difference as well.
Okay, so a lot of stigmas and things that need to be addressed still, clearly.
Correct.
Well, Leanne, thank you very much. That's Leanne Back, the Director of Advisory Services at Grant Thornton. Well, we